What if the most powerful message you could send to a narcissist was complete silence? Not anger, not begging, not a dramatic goodbye, just quiet, unshakable, unapologetic silence. You see, narcissists don't fear your fury. They don't lose, sleep over your accusations or tears. In fact, they feed off it. Because to them, any reaction, whether it's heartbreak or rage, is proof they still matter. Proof that they still have space in your mind and power over your emotions. But something changes the moment you stop responding. When the texts go unanswered, the thoughts stop circling, the need for closure dissolves, and all that's left is peace. To most people, that's healing. But to a narcissist, it's devastating. Because silence isn't indifference. It's a signal that you're no longer part of their script. You've walked off the stage and left them performing, alone. And in that moment, everything begins to collapse for them. Not because you shouted, not because you slammed the door, but because you finally stopped needing them. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the psychology of what happens when the narcissist realizes you truly don't care anymore. From the denial that clouds their mind, to the desperate attempts to reel you back in, to the slow, painful unraveling of their carefully built illusion of control. This is the journey they never wanted to take. And it's one they cannot win. If you've ever been caught in a relationship with someone who made you feel like you were constantly walking on eggshells, always trying to be enough, always fighting to be heard, this video is for you. And hey, if this resonates with you, take a second to like this video, subscribe, and follow Daily Stoic Habits. We share powerful insights every week to help you break toxic patterns, reclaim your peace, and live with clarity and purpose. Now let's begin with the first stage, denial. The moment they first notice your silence and convince themselves you're still watching because in their world, your stillness can't be real. Not yet. They tell themselves, this is temporary. They're just mad. They'll come back. They always do. In their mind, your silence isn't real. It's a tactic, a trick, a power play. Because that's how they see the world, through the lens of manipulation. Every emotion is a transaction. Every pause is just another move in the game they believe they're still winning. They can't imagine that you're really done, that you finally walked away, not with fire, but with peace. To them, silence is still part of the dance, a cue for them to step in with the usual routine, vague texts, nostalgic references, sudden check-ins out of nowhere. You'll notice this phase by the little things, an old song they post on social media, a random emoji they send late at night, a mutual friend suddenly bringing up their name. It's all bait. None of it is heartfelt. None of it is about reconnecting with you as a person. It's about confirming their belief. You still care. You're still watching. You're still theirs. And when you don't bite, when your phone stays locked, your heart stays quiet, and your life moves forward without them, something in their mind starts to crack. Wait, is this real? You see, narcissists don't process emotional distance the way healthy people do. They're not used to silence meaning anything other than manipulation. So, your calm detachment doesn't signal growth to them. It triggers panic. But instead of accepting the truth, that you've moved on, they double down. They tell themselves you're being dramatic, emotional, unfair. They begin creating stories to soothe their ego. They're probably waiting for me to chase them. They just want attention. They'll break first. In denial, the narcissist becomes a playwright, frantically rewriting the script in which they're still the center of your universe. Even your lack of communication becomes a scene in their imaginary drama. And behind that denial is fear. Fear that their influence is slipping. Fear that they're not the one pulling the strings anymore. Because without your emotional responses, they begin to lose their sense of power. You were their mirror, their source of identity, their confirmation that they still mattered. Now, you've become a blank wall, and they can't stand it. So, they test you. They start small. A vague story on social media. A subtle jab hidden in a joke. A comment on an old photo. Anything to get you to react. Because to them, your reaction is oxygen. It doesn't even have to be positive. Anger, sadness, curiosity, anything is better than indifference. But when you don't engage, when you keep living your life without responding, the denial starts to melt into something far more dangerous: desperation. And yet in this first phase, they still wear the mask. They still act like everything's fine, like they're unfazed, like they're just checking in. But behind the mask, they're spiraling. They're terrified. Not because they miss you, but because they no longer control how you see them. They're no longer being reflected. And for someone who's built their identity on image and reaction, that's unbearable. This is why the denial phase is so subtle and so deceptive. You might second-guess yourself during this stage. You might see their name pop up and feel a flicker of guilt, of nostalgia, of doubt. You might wonder, am I being too cold? Am I just running away? And that's exactly what they're hoping for. That tiny sliver of uncertainty. That's the thread they want to pull, because once you react, they're back in control. But here's the truth. Your silence is not a game. It's not a move. It's your healing. It's the sound of boundaries being built, of dignity returning. And they don't know what to do with that. So they stall, they hover, they poke, they wait. All in the hope that you'll break the silence first. But when you don't, when the days stretch into weeks and the curtain doesn't rise on another act in their performance, they begin to feel something unfamiliar. They begin to feel powerless. And that's when the real unraveling begins. Because denial can only last so long. Eventually, the narcissist realizes you're not playing anymore. And in that moment, they are faced with the truth they've spent years avoiding. You're gone, and they can't bring you back. When silence doesn't break, when the bait goes untouched and the performance earns no applause, panic begins to set in. That's when the narcissist makes their next move. No more waiting in the shadows. No more testing the waters. It's time to reassert control. Because to a narcissist, your silence is not seen as healing. It's seen as a power vacuum. And vacuums must be filled. So they spring into action, not out of love, not out of understanding, but out of desperation. The kind of desperation that comes when they sense their grip is slipping, when they feel the mirror fading. In their world, you leaving doesn't mean you've found peace. It means they've lost control, and that cannot stand. This stage is where the charm returns, but it's a rehearsed charm, one they've used before. Think of it like a greatest hits album of emotional manipulation. Suddenly, your phone lights up with sweet messages, unexpected apologies, maybe even photos from your past together with a caption like, "Remember this?" They might promise they've changed, that they've seen the light, that losing you made them realize what you truly mean. But don't be fooled. These aren't signs of growth. They're survival tactics. A narcissist doesn't evolve. They adapt to regain power. Their actions in this stage are designed with one goal in mind: get a reaction. That's all. It doesn't matter if you come back with love or fury. Both are acceptable as long as it means you're re-engaged. Because to them, engagement equals control. And the moment you respond, even with a single word, they know the ISO ducker is still cracked open. But here's the part they don't understand. This time, something is different. This time, you've grown. You're not the same person who used to chase closure, who believed that if you just explained your pain clearly enough, they'd finally understand. Now you don't need understanding. You need peace. So while they cycle through tactics, texting you late at night, suddenly being spiritual, claiming to have gone to therapy, or even dangling jealousy by flaunting a new relationship, they're secretly unraveling behind the scenes. Because none of it is working, you're still not reacting, and that's terrifying to them. So they escalate. One day it's a warm message filled with longing. The next they accuse you of being heartless, of ghosting them, of abandoning the relationship. You might hear things like, "You're cold. You've changed. I guess I never really mattered to you." But these aren't real reflections. They're emotional grenades meant to spark guilt, to trigger old patterns, to get you defending yourself. Why? Because if you're defending yourself, you're still playing. You're still in the script, and that's all they need. But what they don't realize is that you're not in the audience anymore. You've left the theater. You've stepped off their stage, and no amount of roses or rage can draw you back. Still, they try. Because in their world, this isn't about love. It never was. This is about dominance. They're not mourning the loss of you as a person. They're mourning the loss of their reflection in your eyes. That's why they'll go to such lengths to reclaim even a sliver of your attention. That's why they might show up where you work, message your friends, or suddenly take an interest in things you love. It's not about reconnection. It's about reconstruction of the power they believe they once had. But as their efforts fail, something inside them begins to fray. The charm fades. The desperation shows. And for the first time, they realize the script may actually be over. And that's when something even darker begins to emerge. When the sweet words no longer work, when the manipulative games fall flat, when you remain calm, grounded, and unbothered. What's left? Only the raw emotion they've tried so hard to avoid, rage, because underneath every failed tactic is a truth they cannot accept. You're no longer theirs to manipulate. You're no longer in orbit around their ego. You're free. And that's when they start to unravel even more. Not on the outside necessarily. On the outside, they may still post smiling photos, flaunt their new life, or tell mutual friends how great they're doing. But underneath, they're cracking. And that crack leads us to the next phase, one of the most dangerous stages of all. When silence doesn't draw you back, when sweet messages go unanswered, when all the strategies and staged performances fail to provoke even a flicker of reaction, the narcissist enters a storm they can no longer disguise, rage. But this isn't the rage of heartbreak. It's not sorrow. It's not grief. It's not the ache of someone mourning lost love. This is a deeper fury, one rooted in entitlement, in wounded ego, in the unbearable thought that they've lost control, for good. To the narcissist, your silence isn't just rejection, it's betrayal, it's rebellion. It's a challenge to the throne they believed they would always occupy in your life. They don't ask, why did they leave? They ask, how dare they leave without apologizing? How dare they stay silent without breaking down? How dare they live well without me? Because to them, your happiness without their permission feels like an act of war. This is where the mask begins to slip. The calm, sweet tone from the previous phase gives way to bitterness, mockery, passive aggression. The narcissist may not always explode publicly. Many are far more subtle. Instead of shouting, they whisper. Instead of confronting, they sabotage. They might start spreading rumors about you, twisting the truth to cast you as cold, unstable, selfish. They play the victim now, the one who gave everything, the one who was abandoned, the one who never got closure. It's not about accuracy, it's about image. Because even if they can't control you, they can try to control how others see you. They begin a smear campaign, maybe not loudly, maybe not all at once, but in conversation, in innuendo, in subtle digs laced with fake sadness, they start rewriting the story. I tried so hard, but they were impossible to please. I guess they never really loved me. They just walked away like I was nothing. And in those words, what they're really trying to do is rewrite their reflection. They can't bear to be seen as the one who failed. So they twist the narrative until it hurts less. For them. Meanwhile, you're still not reacting. You're not defending yourself. You're not correcting the lies. You're not coming back to explain or clean up their mess. And that silence, that total disengagement, it burns more than anything else. Because for someone who thrives on reaction, on emotional feedback, on control through chaos, your peace is unbearable. It confirms what they refuse to say out loud. You've moved on. You no longer belong to their story. That's when the rage deepens. But it doesn't just go outward, it turns inward. and it starts to show in their behavior. They may act recklessly, jump into shallow relationships, overshare on social media, spend excessively, party too hard, disappear for days, anything to escape the gnawing emptiness that's now swallowing them whole. They'll flaunt a new partner, post pictures of smiles that don't reach their eyes, tell mutual friends how better off they are. But behind every post, every laugh, every exaggerated show of happiness is the truth they're unraveling. And still, you remain silent. You don't engage. You don't explain. You don't flinch. And that is the final confirmation they never wanted. Because now, for the first time, they realize this isn't just distance. This is erasure. You haven't just left the relationship. You've left the role, the part you once played, the mirror, the audience, the emotional supply, is gone. And they are no longer the star of the show. No more control, no more drama, no more stage. And that, to a narcissist, is a living nightmare. Because deep down, they know this isn't about love lost. It's about power lost. And power is the only thing they ever truly wanted. But here's what's even more devastating. For them, you were the one who saw them, really saw them. You looked past the mask. You believed in their potential. You stayed when no one else did. You forgave things you shouldn't have had to. You offered love, patience, second chances, and they still destroyed it. Now that chance is gone. That mirror is shattered, and no amount of rage can glue it back together. When rage doesn't work, when the shouting goes unheard and the blame is met with stillness, narcissists don't reflect, they rewrite. Because if they can't control you, they'll try to control the story about you. This is where the narcissist retreats to a world they can still dominate, the narrative. A space where facts are flexible, memory is malleable, and truth is whatever makes them feel less broken. In this stage, they're not just telling stories, they're reconstructing reality. And in this new script, you are no longer the loyal, loving partner who tried again and again to make things work. You're the cold one, the unstable one, the villain who suddenly disappeared. Why? Because the narcissist cannot live with the truth, that you left because you had enough. That your silence isn't manipulation, it's liberation. That you didn't need to make them pay, you just needed to walk away. But in their mind, that's unacceptable. So they reach for the only tool left in their arsenal: distortion. They begin to recast your kindness as control, your patience as weakness, your boundaries as selfishness. And your absence? That becomes abandonment. It's not about accuracy. It's about survival. Emotional survival. Because if they told the truth, that they drained you, manipulated you, belittled you, and made you question your own worth, it would shatter the fragile ego they've spent their whole life protecting. So they flip the script. They become the misunderstood hero, the heartbroken victim, the one who tried so hard but got nothing in return. They might say things like, "I gave them everything and they just vanished. I don't know what happened, they just changed. They weren't who I thought they were." To the outside world, it looks like grief. It sounds like loss, but it's not. It's image management. It's reputation control. And what hurts them most? You don't even try to defend yourself. You don't rush to explain. You don't correct the lies. You don't send a long message clearing the air, because you no longer need to. You've outgrown the need to prove yourself to someone who never truly saw you. And that silence, again, is louder than any rebuttal, because it shows the game is over. You're not playing anymore. And they can spin as many tales as they like, but without your reaction, it's all just noise echoing into emptiness. Now let's be honest. This part is hard. Hearing your name twisted, watching someone rewrite the truth of your relationship like it was just a bad dream they had. Seeing friends, family, or coworkers swayed by a carefully crafted sob story. But here's the truth. You don't have to chase your reputation. You don't have to explain the invisible wounds you carried. You don't owe anyone the pages of your diary just to be understood. The people who truly know you, who really see you, won't need an explanation, and the ones who believe the narcissist's version, they were never meant to be in your healing circle anyway. What you're doing now is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's choosing inner peace over public validation. It's realizing that defending yourself in a false narrative only keeps you in the story you've already left. And that, to a narcissist, is the greatest loss of all. Not just that you're gone, but that you're okay being gone. Because while they're spinning tales to anyone who'll listen, desperately trying to make sense of a version of you that fits their need to be right, you're building something real, a life without them, a mind that no longer spins in circles, a heart that finally rests. But beneath all their stories is fear. They fear being forgotten. They fear that you'll never think of them again. They fear the silence that used to be your pain, because now it's your peace. And peace is the one thing they can't fake, can't control, and can't destroy. So while they rewrite history to cope with the emptiness, you quietly live your truth. Not loud, not dramatic, just free. When the story no longer convinces anyone, when no one responds to the victim narrative, like when even the lies fall flat, there's only one place left to go: inward. And that, for the narcissist, is terrifying. Because this is the moment when every tactic has failed, every manipulation, every plea, every mask. There's no response, no audience, no reflection, just silence. And in that silence, something begins to crumble. Not just on the surface, but at the core. Because for most people, identity is built from within. We know who we are, what we value, what we believe, even when no one's watching. But for a narcissist, their entire sense of self comes from outside, from how others see them, from the feedback they get, positive or negative. Even contempt can feel like connection. So what happens when no one is looking? They begin to disappear. It's not dramatic at first. It starts with a dull ache, a restless feeling, a sense that something's missing, but not just a person, a purpose, a mirror. They may not be able to name it, but it haunts them all the same. They check your social media. They reread old messages. They stare into the void of a phone that no longer lights up with your name. And in that space where your reactions used to live, there's nothing. That nothing feels unbearable, because it reflects the truth they've always tried to avoid. Without someone to reflect them, they have no idea who they are. They may look composed on the outside, smiling in group photos, making small talk at work, pretending to be fine. But if you look closer, there's a hollowness behind the eyes. Their energy feels disconnected, like they're not fully in themselves. And the truth is, they're not. They're adrift. For so long, you were the mirror they depended on. You reflected their charm, their strength, their worth, and yes, sometimes even their cruelty. But even that was something. It was proof they still mattered, that they still had power. Now they feel invisible. No one to manipulate, no one to blame, no one to compare their new partner to. The stage is empty. The spotlight is gone. The audience has left. And for the first time, they can't distract themselves with noise. The silence becomes suffocating. The stillness unbearable. They may try to fill it with things, new clothes, new people, new experiences. But nothing lands. Nothing sticks. Because the hole inside them isn't shaped like you. It's shaped like identity. And they never built one of their own. You were the one who came closest, the one who saw past the mask, who loved the parts they couldn't love in themselves. And when you left, you took something they never knew they needed, the only glimpse they ever had of who they could be. The pain now doesn't come from losing love. It comes from losing definition. You were their mirror, their compass, their source. And now without you, they are undefined. But instead of facing that truth, owning the damage, sitting with the emptiness, they do what they've always done. Reach outward. They begin the frantic search for someone new, someone to plug the hole, someone who will reflect them again. And so begins the next chapter in the cycle. A search that has nothing to do with love, and everything to do with escaping the emptiness closing in around them. You see, a narcissist doesn't view relationships as shared journeys. They see them as reflections, tools to validate their existence. And when you took that validation away, they didn't grieve your absence, they grieved the loss of their own image in your eyes. So they rush, they swipe, they flirt, they love bomb. They jump into something new so fast it almost seems rehearsed, and that's because it is. They use the same script, the same lines, the same whirlwind beginning. I've never met anyone like you. You're exactly what I've been looking for. I feel like I can finally breathe again. But it's not about this new person. It never was. It's about proving, mostly to themselves, that they still matter, that they're still desirable, that they still have control. This new relationship isn't evidence of healing. It's evidence of avoidance. And while it may look like they've moved on, posting happy photos, writing long captions about new beginnings, you know better, because you've seen behind the curtain. You were the one who held them when their mask slipped. You were the one who stayed when things got dark. You were the one who believed they could change, but they didn't. And now, the new partner becomes a prop, a placeholder, a mirror, someone who, for a while, reflects the version of themselves they're desperate to believe in. But it's temporary, because no matter how polished the outside looks, nothing has changed on the inside. And soon, the cracks begin to show. Because this new person doesn't know the script yet. They haven't seen the patterns. They don't realize that every romantic gesture is just a rerun of what came before. They might be easier to impress, easier to control, but they don't bring the depth that you did, because you, despite all the pain, loved them deeply. You saw their flaws. You stayed through their storms. And you walked away not because you stopped caring, but because you finally cared enough about yourself to leave. And that kind of presence, that doesn't just disappear. So even while they try to replace you, they compare. Subtly, quietly. In the back of their mind, they replay how you made them feel. And how this new person falls short. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. And that kind of realness is rare. It's confronting, it's unforgettable. And it's exactly what they now try to recreate over and over again. But never quite succeed. Because what they miss isn't just the relationship. It's the reflection. It's the version of themselves they saw through your patience, your belief, your love. Now every new partner is a shadow, a poor imitation, someone who, no matter how compliant, can never match the depth of the one who walked away. And that's the part they can't outrun. They left you emotionally starved, but you left them spiritually exposed. You were the only one who ever saw them, truly saw them, and still tried to love what you found. And now, with someone new, it all feels thin, forced, performed. That's why they keep checking your profile, why they bring up your name in casual conversations, why they linger in your memory, even as they try to erase you in theirs, because even as they move on in public, they remain stuck in private, chasing a feeling they once had, but didn't value until it was gone. And eventually, the act gets harder to maintain. The new relationship starts to crack, the mask starts to slip, and the emptiness returns, stronger than before, when all the tricks no longer work, when every attempt at replacement fails to fill the void, when no one looks their way, not even in anger. The narcissist enters the most dangerous phase of all. Ego collapse. This isn't just sadness. This isn't a passing mood. This is a slow, silent unraveling, an identity crisis for someone who never truly had an identity to begin with. You see, most people build a sense of self over time, through reflection, through trial and error, through relationships rooted in truth. But the narcissist? They never built from the inside. They built from reactions, from praise, from manipulation, from control. They became a collection of masks, stitched together by what other people saw and felt. Now, with no one left to reflect them, the masks begin to fall, and underneath there's nothing, no anchor, no center, no me they can return to. They stare at their own reflection and feel like they're looking at a stranger. Not in a dramatic way, not like a movie scene, but in a quiet, disorienting sense of disconnection. They go to work. They smile. They post selfies. But their actions feel hollow. Their thoughts are scattered. Sleep becomes shallow. Anxiety creeps in. The panic attacks no longer come from fear of losing someone, but from fear of losing themselves. They begin to say things like, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't feel like myself. I feel empty." And it's not just emotional pain, it's existential, because they were never taught to sit with discomfort, to own their flaws, to reflect and grow. They were taught to survive, to perform, to win, to stay admired at all costs. So now when there's no admiration, no validation, no control, they're completely lost. They may try to cling to pieces of their former identity, the charming professional, the irresistible lover, the misunderstood soul. But those roles don't land anymore, because deep down, they no longer believe them either. They feel like imposters in their own life. Actors who forgot their lines, characters without a script. And the scariest part? They don't know how to ask for help because to ask would require a kind of vulnerability they've spent their whole lives avoiding. It would require admitting that behind the performance, there is pain. Behind the pride, there is fear. Behind the ego, there is a child who never learned how to feel safe being real, and so they collapse inward, quietly, invisibly. To the outside world, they may still seem fine, but the people closest to them can sense something is off. Their energy is scattered. Their eyes no longer connect. They speak in circles, they try to make plans but don't follow through. Because inside, they're crumbling. They're not just mourning the loss of a person. They're mourning the realization that they've never truly been a person, at least not in the way others are. You gave them a glimpse of what it could be like. To be loved as they are. To be seen without masks. To be accepted even in their darkest moments. But they pushed it away. And now they don't just miss you. They miss who they were when they were with you. Because even if they'll never say it out loud, you brought out something in them they couldn't find on their own, and with that gone, the collapse begins. Not because of what you took, but because of what they never built. And this is the tragic irony. They feared losing control. They feared being abandoned. They feared insignificance. But in clinging so tightly to power, they lost everything real, and by refusing to face themselves, they became someone even they can't recognize. So where do they go from here? Some stay stuck in the spiral. Others jump to the next distraction. A few, very few, may begin the long, painful road of real transformation. But one thing is certain. You won't be there to witness it. Because while they remain trapped in the ruins of a false self, you've been rebuilding. Quietly. Gently. Honestly. And that takes us to the final chapter. The quiet ending. The moment where your stories truly part ways. Forever. There's no grand finale. No final confrontation. No moment where the narcissist finally says, "You were right. I see it now." That scene will never happen. Because this ending is quiet. You didn't need closure. You didn't wait for an apology that would never come. You simply let go. And that's what makes this ending so powerful. While they remained spinning in old patterns, repeating the same tactics, chasing new reflections, rewriting the past, you were busy building something they never truly understood. Peace. Didn't happen overnight. You had to unlearn the lies you were taught about your worth, your voice, your needs. You had to grieve a version of love that was never real. You had to sit in the silence and face your pain until it no longer controlled you, and eventually something shifted. The memories lost their sting. Their name lost its power. Your heart no longer raced at the thought of them. That's when you knew you weren't surviving anymore. You were healing. Meanwhile, the narcissist stayed stuck. Not because they couldn't move on, but because they refused to look within. They kept trying to win a game you stopped playing, kept acting out scenes you'd already walked away from, kept trying to control a version of you that no longer existed. They may have smiled for someone new. They may have boasted of accomplishments, surrounded themselves with noise, crafted the illusion that they've leveled up. But deep down, they felt it. Not in their mind, but in their gut. That ache, that emptiness, that quiet truth they'll never admit. They lost the only person who truly saw them, and they destroyed it with their own hands. And you? You stopped needing revenge. You stopped hoping they'd understand. You stopped trying to prove your worth to someone who only ever saw you through the lens of control, not through your soul. Because the victory wasn't in making them regret it. The victory was in no longer needing them to. You rose. Not louder, but lighter. Not angrier, but freer. And if they ever wonder why you left, why you stopped answering, why you no longer even mention their name, let that silence speak louder than any goodbye ever could. Because some stories don't end with a bang. They end with peace. You no longer live in reaction to their chaos. You no longer measure your worth by how much pain you can endure. You've stepped out of the shadows of their story and into the light of your own. You're the main character now. And this story, it's not about what they lost. It's about what you finally found. Yourself. So if you ever doubt your choice, if you ever feel a pull toward the past, remember this. The narcissist didn't lose you when you walked away. They lost you the moment they thought they could break you and you'd still stay. You didn't leave in bitterness. You left in truth. And that truth? It's what set you free. If this story spoke to your experience, know this. You're not alone. You're not broken. And your quiet strength is enough. If you'd like to hear more reflections like this on healing, boundaries, and reclaiming your peace, subscribing to Daily Stoic Habits. We're here to remind you, each week, that you are the author now. And your next chapter, it's going to be powerful.